In 1971, the United States broke a promise to the entire world. It told every country holding dollars, "This paper is as good as gold." Then one Sunday night, on live television, the president took that promise back. No warning, no vote, no apology. And instead of collapsing, America got more powerful than ever. This is the story of how a broken promise became the greatest financial weapon in human history. Let's go back to July 1944. World War II is still burning in Europe and the Pacific. But in a quiet hotel in New Hampshire, 44 countries are already fighting over something else: money. They know the war is ending, and they know whoever controls money after the war controls the peace. Here's the situation. During the war, terrified European nations shipped their gold to one place they trusted wouldn't get bombed: the United States. By 1944, America is sitting on almost 70% of the world's gold reserves. So the delegates make a deal. It's called Bretton Woods. The rule is simple. The US dollar gets pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. Every other currency, the British pound, the French franc, the Japanese yen, gets pegged to the dollar. The dollar isn't just America's currency anymore. It becomes the world's currency, backed by gold, backed by trust. For 25 years it works. The dollar is as good as gold. You could, in theory, walk into a US bank as a foreign government and exchange your dollars for real physical gold. But here's where things start to crack. By the late 1960s, America is spending like never before. Two wars, really. A hot one in Vietnam, and a domestic one, the war on poverty. Both cost fortunes. The problem: America doesn't have the gold to back all the dollars it's printing to pay for it. Foreign governments start noticing. France, under Charles de Gaulle, starts doing something almost nobody expected. It starts literally shipping dollars back to America and demanding gold in return. De Gaulle doesn't trust the system anymore. He sends a French warship, yes, an actual warship, to New York to collect France's gold. Other nations start quietly doing the same thing, quietly asking, is the dollar really worth what America says it's worth? Most people think the US had unlimited money to print. It didn't, not yet. By 1971, America's gold reserves have fallen from that post-war peak to a level so low, economists inside the government are panicking behind closed doors. If every country holding dollars showed up at once and demanded gold, the United States literally could not pay. The vault would be empty. So on August 13, 1971, President Richard Nixon secretly summons his top economic advisors to Camp David. Nobody outside that room knows what's about to happen. Not Congress, not America's allies, not even the State Department. For 3 days they debate one question: what do we do when the world's trust in our money is about to break? On Sunday, August 15th, Nixon goes on national television. He announces, in plain terms the public barely understands the weight of, that the United States will no longer exchange dollars for gold, effective immediately. Just like that, with one broadcast, the promise that anchored the entire global financial system for 27 years is gone. This moment gets a nickname that sticks: the Nixon shock. Markets panic. Allies are furious. They weren't even warned. And a terrifying question hangs over the entire planet. If the dollar isn't backed by gold anymore, what is it backed by? Most people assume the dollar's power should have collapsed right there. Here's where things took a dark turn for the old system, and a golden opportunity for a new one. With gold gone, America needed something else. Not physical, not shiny. Something the entire world would still need, every single day, no matter what. The answer was sitting under the sand of the Arabian Peninsula. Because 2 years after Nixon closed the gold window, U.S. officials, led by Henry Kissinger, flew to Saudi Arabia with a proposal that would quietly reshape the entire global economy. And almost nobody watching the news that year understood what had just happened. Here's the deal. America offered Saudi Arabia, roughly translated into plain English, you sell your oil, and only your oil, in US dollars. No exceptions. Not francs, not yen, not gold. Dollars only. In exchange, America gives you two things: military protection, and a safe place to invest your massive oil profits, mainly US government debt. Saudi Arabia agrees, and soon the rest of OPEC follows. Now think about what this actually means. Every country on Earth needs oil. Oil now can only be bought in dollars, which means every country on Earth now needs to hold dollars. You think that sounds like a small technical detail. It wasn't. It was the birth of the Petrodollar, and it may be the single most important financial arrangement of the last 50 years. Because here's what most people miss. Gold was a limited physical thing America had to dig out of the ground or win in trade. Global demand for oil. That was infinite, permanent, and growing every year. America had just replaced a shrinking asset with a bottomless one. Now here's where the real magic, or the real danger depending how you look at it, begins. Once the whole world needs dollars to buy oil, and needs dollars to trade with America, and needs dollars sitting in reserve just to look financially stable, the United States gets a superpower no other country on Earth has. It can print more of the one thing everyone needs. Think about what happens when any other country prints too much of its own currency. Prices at home skyrocket. Inflation eats away at people's savings. The currency loses value fast, because nobody outside that country wants to hold it. But America is different, because the whole planet needs dollars. For oil, for trade, for reserves. A huge portion of every dollar printed doesn't even stay in America. It flows overseas. It gets absorbed by foreign banks, foreign governments, foreign companies. Most people think printing money always causes runaway inflation. For decades, America proved that rule wrong, as long as the rest of the world kept demanding your currency. This is how the United States could run trade deficits for 50 straight years, spend more than it earns, and fund 2 world wars worth of military bases across the globe, all while its currency stayed the most trusted money on earth. Economists have a blunt name for this. It's called America's exorbitant privilege. But here's the part of the story most people never hear. What happens to a country that tries to walk away from the dollar system? In the year 2000, Iraq's Saddam Hussein announced he would start selling his country's oil in euros, not dollars. A small move, on paper. 3 years later, the United States invaded Iraq. Officially, the reasons given were weapons of mass destruction. But historians and economists have long pointed to that currency switch as a quieter, less discussed motive behind the scenes. In 2011, Libya's Muammar Gaddafi was pushing an even bigger idea, a gold-backed African currency that could let oil-producing nations bypass the dollar entirely. That same year, NATO forces intervened in Libya's civil war. Gaddafi was killed within months. Now I want to be careful here. Correlation isn't proof of causation, and both wars had many stated justifications, but the pattern is hard to ignore. Nearly every nation that has seriously challenged the dollar's dominance over oil trade has faced severe, often military consequences. Whether by direct design or convenient coincidence, the message the world absorbed was the same. The petrodollar system isn't just an economic arrangement, it's protected like a matter of national security. So, 50 years later, is the system still holding? Cracks are showing. China now settles a growing share of its oil purchases with Saudi Arabia in yuan, not dollars. Russia, cut off from the dollar system after 2022, has been forced to build alternative payment networks. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now expanded further, openly discusses reducing dollar dependency. The dollar's share of global reserves has been slipping for 2 decades, not collapsing, slipping. But here's the twist almost nobody talks about. The dollar doesn't need to be the only currency in the world. It just needs to remain the most trusted one, longer than every alternative. And right now, despite all the cracks, there is still no serious rival. Not the euro, fractured by 17 different national governments. Not the yuan, tightly controlled by Beijing's capital restrictions. Gold is rising again as a hedge, but no modern economy can run entirely on gold bars. So the empire built on the petrodollar isn't dead, but for the first time in 50 years, it's being tested. So let's go back to that Sunday night in August, 1971. Nixon didn't destroy the dollar's power by breaking its promise to gold. He accidentally set it free. Free from the limits of a metal buried in the ground. Free to become something no currency in history had ever been. A currency backed not by gold, not by silver, but by the world's need for oil, trade, and trust itself. And that's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath every headline about U.S. debt, U.S. sanctions, and U.S. military bases around the globe. It's not really about weapons. It's about which currency the world can't afford to stop using. The question isn't whether the dollar will lose its throne someday. Every reserve currency in history eventually has. The Dutch guilder, the British pound, all of them. The real question is, what happens to a world of 8 billion people on the day it finally does? That's a story for another video. If you've made it this far, you're not just watching finance history. You're learning to read the headlines everyone else scrolls past. Every war, every sanction, every surprise currency crisis makes a lot more sense once you understand the money behind it. That's exactly what this channel is built for. Every week, I break down the hidden financial stories behind the empires, wars, and crashes that shape the world we live in now. If you want to actually understand power, not just who has it, but how they built it, subscribe, and join the rest of us who are done being surprised by the news.